Hello, number ones. Welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, and today we are not starting strong. Alright, so I'm on Twitter, I'm on X, and you should come and follow me because if you don't, you're a muppet. You're a muppet. Link in the description, pinned comment everywhere to your convenience. Come on. Let's hit 30,000 followers. Let's go. The account interested as F has posted this. Let's watch it.
Legend has it that during the 12th century Crusades, knights facing years of battle far from home devised a grim solution to ensure their wives remained faithful and protected from assault: the chastity belt. Early designs consisted of iron plates covering the groin and rear, held together by a locked ring around the waist. A round hole was left in the back plate to allow for defecation, while the front featured an oval slit for urination, narrower than a finger, with sharp iron spikes around the edges to deter any unwanted attempt. Before departing, the knight would lock the belt and take the only key with him, believing this iron grip would keep loyalty secure. But by the mid-19th century, chastity belts were no longer exclusive to women. A new version appeared, this time for boys. At the time, self-pleasure was believed to harm both body and mind, so for protection, teenage boys were forced to wear a metal chastity belt even during sleep.
Okay. I just can't. Where do I even start? So, of course, I think you will have already figured out, you may have heard of medieval chastity belts. They're a myth, they're not a thing. They were never a thing, they were not done, it's nonsense. But before I jump into that and we discuss it and when it's mentioned and how it's mentioned and if it's mentioned and where the myth comes from and all of that, I would like to say that, well, first and foremost, I want to look at the nonsensical nature of this 3D representation. Because problem number one, these orifices, right? How are they going to work if she's going to wear it on anything that isn't their bare skin? Like, honestly, what's the point? Nothing is good. She's wearing the shorts. It doesn't work then. Either of the orifices are not going to work, right? Now, of course, you could tell me, no, it's because they had to be censored. They can't show full frontal naked. I get it, but you could pixelate it, I guess. You could put like a circle saying censored, but whatever. The fact that she's wearing shorts under it, it's ridiculous. Anyways, the other thing is that this is not anatomically accurate. The distance between it's like this much distance. It's not how the female body works. It isn't. Look at that. That's not how the female body works. Let's have a look at the myth, shall we? I couldn't help myself and I said it. I said it right here. Right here, guys. I couldn't help myself. 26,044. Can we get to 27,000? So whenever you think about this idea, you imagine these chastity belts, and sometimes you see stuff like this, and you're like, ooh, that looks real. So is this something that medieval, you can imagine, like, oh, well, yeah, medieval knight, he doesn't want to F around, he's going to fight in the Crusades, a beautiful wife stays home, it's one other situation, let me do the belt. No. The reality is that there is no real mention of these in a serious sense. Now, we're going to read an article from Live Science that I think approaches this in a way that is concise. It's a little superficial, but at least it kind of presents a good positions on it. Because the main problem, and I'm going to expand on it, of course, but the main problem with this is the fact that the only mentions have to do with satire. And in fact, I will connect to that because it's an important element of medieval society. What are chastity belts really? By Kate Goldbaum. Chastity belts, devices that were reportedly worn by women in the Middle Ages to prevent sexual intercourse, are often referenced in popular culture as an extreme method of enforcing fidelity. But these belts are curiously missing from most legitimate medieval texts, which initially puzzled historians. Why would it puzzle historians? So what are chastity belts and did women really wear them? According to curators at the Semmelweis Museum in Budapest, which displayed an exhibition on the history of the chastity belt in 2010, the belts were thought to be introduced as an answer to unchecked female promiscuity when knights left for battles, pilgrimage, or religious crusades. So basically, as you see, even a curator at a museum, not the first time that we see curators at museum fail miserably at their job. I mean, I've already got a video where I was dismantling. I might do a remake, in fact. I might do a remake, in fact, of someone saying, oh, yeah, museum curator, massive museum. And this guy is like, oh, yeah, look, this is samurai armor, which is light and nice and versatile, not like those tin can that couldn't even move medieval people. This is a museum curator specifically in the armor wing of said museum. So this happens, unfortunately. Museum curators, sometimes they're really good, sometimes they're absolute complete total shit. It happens. But as you see, it's the exact same myth that video was pushing. Classen, author of the Medieval Chastity Belt, a myth-making process, 2007 publication, told Time magazine that the devices were first mentioned in a treatise on siege machines written by Conrad Kieser in 1405. Yeah, and that's the satirical. According to Classen, Kieser was a German engineer and artist, and the concept for the chastity belt appeared in the afterword of his treatise. Initially, they were described as an imaginative joke, but the belt went on to become a popular subject of satire. And to be fair, we could objectively end the video here, because this already, in a very superficial manner, sort of covers the whole situation. But I'm going to go a lot more deeply because it's interesting. Academics began to question the authenticity of the devices when they could find no mention of chastity belts in any serious historical context. Yes, open quotes. No author of sermon literature or penitentiary texts or didactic and legal writers has ever mentioned the chastity belt, probably because already the basic idea behind it defies the basic needs of the human female body, Classen wrote. Not only is there scarce historical evidence that chastity belts were an actual undergarment in the Middle Ages, but there is no logic to support their existence either. Open quotes. How could these rough, hard objects be worn on the groin without causing deep and gradually more and more infected cuticular wounds within a few days? Experts at the Semmelweis Museum said. Yeah, sure. I mean, absolutely. Yeah, I can see that. You could pad them. It's a lot stronger to say we have no evidence for it. No one mentions it in legal text, in anything, so it's nonsense, and we don't have them. Any object found in the medieval context, we just don't have them, so yeah, it's nonsense. Not to mention, whenever they are mentioned, is in connection to satire, clearly is a joke. That's a lot stronger. This is not that great, because it in fact shows that, unfortunately, sometimes experts as well, they may be experts of theory, but they don't know that something that is externally metal can in fact be padded with a liner inside. And so when you do this, I mean, it still wouldn't be sanitary, obviously, because, I mean, you can't change it, so you sweat in it, and you for how long? The whole freaking crusade? So, yeah, it's still nonsense, but not for the chafing reason. There are ways to avoid it. It's a little bit of a weak line of argumentation when you do understand how medieval iron garments work and steel garments work, armor of course, because they usually don't touch the skin directly. Metal almost never touches skin directly when it's worn, and this is something that goes all the way back to classical antiquity and possibly even the beginning of armor, whether it started in the Bronze Age or whether, like I think, started in the Copper Age. I agree with the overall conclusion anyways. Leslie Smith, a late 16th century historian and curator for the Tudbury Castle in the United Kingdom, agrees with Classen. In 2007 article for the British Medical Journal, she wrote, open quotes, I have travelled abroad and looked at art collections and, as yet, haven't seen a chastity belt that can be proved to be medieval in origin, close quotes. Yeah, that's great. We review iconography, we review depictions, art, mentions, literary mentions, and there's nothing. The inclination to believe the myth of the chastity belt is understandable, I agree, though. Open quotes, in medieval Europe, any sexual activity that did not lead to conception was supposed to be forbidden, close quotes, Smith said. Yes, so supposed, in the sense that it is true that this was, generally speaking, the position of the church. So Roman Catholic Church, to focus a little bit on the West specifically, but in general, Orthodoxy, the church did push this idea. Did the people actually follow it? In some instances, but here's what I wanted to connect and kind of go a little deeper in this. The idea of medieval conceptualization or mental approach to sex and sexuality. Oftentimes, when we think of the medieval period, we think of a very Puritan period. People don't joke about sex. They don't talk about it. They only do it for conception, and then everything else is like, oh, forbidden, taboo, you don't say this, you don't show that. Now, of course, the dress, the appearance, the apparel didn't show anything, right? The medieval people were indeed very reserved when it comes to that, and so at the end of the day, yeah, if you're the husband, you're gonna see your wife and vice versa. But the public, they were always well covered and well dressed. But that's not really the point. When it comes to the medieval mind, the monumental amount, because again, if you spend time with the sources, the monumental amount of sexual jokes, sexual satire, dirty double entendre, or stories and whatnot, it's full of it. Medieval people loved it. They were very dirty-minded. So, of course, you wouldn't make those jokes in front of the bishop in church, but in your own village, while you're working the land, when you're drinking with your mates, oh, absolutely. So that's important to remember. So this is why I wanted to say that the fact that they would joke about something like, oh, Tom is going on a crusade, he better make a chastity belt for that wife of his. Yeah, I can absolutely see the joke when you put it into context. But that doesn't mean that people actually did it. And most likely, if you were to resurrect a medieval knight and said, so did you do the chastity belt? He'd be like, the what? Either he doesn't understand, maybe it wasn't part of the jokes, or he does understand, laughs, and said, that was a good one. Yeah, it's a good one, mate. Chastity belt on the wife. Klassen likens the chastity belt myth to another widely held but similarly incorrect belief that medieval people thought the earth was flat. Exactly, yeah. Yeah, that's a myth. They didn't. In his book, Klassen hypothesizes that this stems from a desire to demonstrate a lack of civility prior to the present age. No, I wouldn't say it's a lack of civility. Civility has nothing to do with misconceptions or misunderstanding or even ignorance in this case. I don't think it's a lack of civility. It's a lack of enlightenment. It's a lack of education that usually you want to portray with this idea. But then again, it's a modern concept and it's a little anachronistic. Because, yeah, in our day and age, I do think that if you want to believe in the flat earth and you're part of flat earth society, which has members all around the globe, then you're free to do it. You're free to do it. I'm all for freedom. You should be able to say it. But I do think that a lot of the people that do belong to the flat earth society are uneducated. And that's maybe they are educated, but they've been prone to conspiracy theories. They got convinced somehow. I don't know. But most likely, if you are an astronomer, if you understand the science, the mathematics behind it, then there is no way you're going to believe in flat earth. Also because one thing that always puzzles me when it comes to flat earth is, but we do look outside. And everything else, every other celestial body of a certain mass is a sphere, whether it be a star, whether it be the sun, whether it be the other planets, Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn, the moon, everything is a sphere, but for some reason the only single object that is flat is our planet. Shouldn't they be like, shouldn't we look and be like, well, look, the moon is flat, the sun is flat, Mars is flat. No, they are all spheres, but ours is not. That already. But of course, medieval people didn't have access to that. They had never seen the cosmos. However, they see it from here. But the one thing that we do know is that medieval people, the learned, the educated, they could read Greek. They could read Latin, whether it be within the church or whether it be nobility, right? And so they could read the classics, and already Aristotle and other Greek writers, they knew that the earth was round, and therefore so did learned medieval people. And this is represented in statuary, this is represented in paintings. We always see that whether it's a pope or whether it's a king or an emperor, like the Holy Roman Emperor, when they want to represent, they always have objects in their hands. Sometimes it's the scepter, but when they do have an object that is supposed to represent their dominion over the earth, it's a sphere. With that being said, what about the uneducated populace? Well, I would say that the majority of people, particularly the farmers, sections of medieval society, the warriors or the knight, the monks, and the farmers, I would say that the farmers didn't even think about it. They didn't care about it. They cared about their job, they cared about the seasons, they cared about is there going to be a famine or not? They cared about having fun, let's have a drink. They weren't there sitting down thinking the way philosophers do, because philosophers have nothing to do. That's why they sit down and think. Farmers are busy. They have to do their job. So I can't really imagine a farmer asking the questions that a philosopher would, also because it's not like they had internet. So farmers hang out with farmers and they talk about farming stuff. Maybe if one of them traveled and returned, they could talk about that. But I can't really imagine the average medieval person, unless they are very educated, they belong to those circles, aristocracy and whatnot. I can't imagine the regular medieval person sitting down and they are literally thinking, do you think the earth is flat or do you think the earth is a globe? Buying into the chastity belt fantasy is means of conceptualizing a backward and dark period prior to our own enlightened era. Yeah, it's a form of, absolutely. Sarah Bond, an assistant professor in the classics department at the University of Iowa, wrote in a popular blog post titled Unlocking the Dark Ages, a short history of chastity belts. Yes, so it's a form of modernism, and there is a difference between presentism and modernism. Presentism is when you attach modern concepts onto people that wouldn't have them, and modernism is instead when usually you think you're superior than people. So I think of the past. So I think in this case it's a matter of modernism. This is why we have this twisted idea of the Middle Ages, and this is why the term Dark Ages has been abandoned. I will say, though, even though early Middle Ages, high medieval, all of that is definitely more apt and better descriptive, Dark Ages is the most epic one of all. So I still like the term, and in games, don't stop using it because it's great. Ultimately, the chastity belt's existence as a legitimate historical artifact should be relegated to the category of myth, experts say. Yes. However, a recent tech innovation designed to protect women from the SA has been criticized as a modern reimagining of the chastity belt. What the heck? I mean, I don't know what this is. A clothing line offering wearable protection for when things go wrong, developed underwear and other garments that would be difficult if not impossible for an attacker to remove. Okay, well, good. I mean, if it helps, I would hope that the conditions in which you live would change so that this is not needed. I didn't even know we were going to talk about this, to be honest, which was accused of placing the burden of our prevention on victims rather than perpetrators. Okay, so this is really weird. What do you mean? Prevention does come when you're wearing an undervest. Of course, it's the victim who's going to get shot that needs to prevent it. The perpetrators need to be stopped. That's different. Look, double tap center of mass. They need to be stopped. Prevention. How is prevention connected to the perpetrator? They don't want to prevent it. Okay, I did not expect this. Whatever the heck this is, I don't know. Gained notoriety in 2013. The company launched, I don't care. AR Wear claimed the garment fabrics could not be ripped or cut so that women and girls can have more power to control the outcome of SA. AR Wear reached their funding goals. Good. Well, I guess if someone wants it and they feel better about it when they go to work, if they have to come back home late, I'd say good for you, more power to you. At that point, who cares? If the victim feels more, I don't even know why we're talking about this, but since we're at it, if the victim feels better, I care about them. I don't care about the perpetrators. I just want them all in jail. Anyways, regardless of that little section at the end, the article was generally speaking well written, so I hope that this helps demystify this nonsense of the chastity belts. If you liked it, please let me know in the comments, and thank you very much for watching. Bye.